So welcome, Lisa.
Hi, everyone. I just want to acknowledge the depth of the talk that we just heard, so thank you, Brooke. So if everyone could please plant their feet on the ground for me and kind of snuggle their hips into their seat and lengthen their spine, roll your shoulders on your back. We're going to get tuned in. Before we do that, let's put a hand on our heart and a hand on our belly. And let's just connect in. Let's anchor inside our body. And take a long, deep breath into the belly and breathe out. And let's do that again. Take a long, deep breath into your belly and breathe out. And then one more long, deep breath in and breathe out. We're in a safe space. Feel yourself grounded and centered, anchored in your body. Know that we're all here together. When you're ready, you can keep your eyes closed or just stay grounded and centered as long as you need to. But when you're ready, I welcome you back into the room and to join me. I want to acknowledge Felicia. Hi, Felicia. Nice to see you. And my sorority sister, Kathy King, just arrived. Woo-hoo! I'm glad you're here. Thank you, Dr. Chappell, for all you've done. Thank you, Dr. Fazio, and thank you, Dr. Sladoff, for everything you've done. I'm so excited to be here, you guys. I'm so happy to be standing in front of you to share what I'm about to share. And thank you to all of my classmates and people that I've learned from. This has been an incredible journey for me, so thank you, thank you, thank you. I'm gonna talk to you about the pathway to bliss, the frequency of bliss. So my topic is yoga as an embodiment pathway for the treatment of eating disorders. When I was at college with Kathy King, I had an eating disorder. It was never diagnosed, but one doesn't have to have a diagnosis to have disordered eating. So in 2023, the head yoga researcher from Harvard came to Chicago to present his research at the Symposium for Medicine and Health. And before he went to this conference, he came to my studio, Heaven Meets Earth, which I opened in 2005 in Evanston, Illinois, to do his presentation. He presented yoga for sleeping disorders, insomnia, mental health, stress and burnout for healthcare workers, yoga for everything. And in the presentation, I asked him, I said, Satbir, what is the problem for mental health? What is the problem? He looked at me, he said, Lisa, it's our thoughts. So we know that the body follows the mind and the mind follows the breath. Patanjali, the great sage that codified yoga, gave us this pathway known as the 8 limbs of yoga. He also mentioned in his Yoga Sutras that we have obstructions to the pathway known as the kleshas. And these are the mental states, fear, ignorance, that clouds our mind, leading to unhealthy action. And the obstacle to reaching this frequency of bliss. So the Hindus called it enlightenment, Jesus called it salvation, the Buddhists called it the release of suffering. So they are ignorance, egoism, desire or attachment to pleasure, addiction, aversion, fear, and attachment. So how would Patanjali diagnose an eating disorder? You guys want to chant with me? Let's chant a little bit, okay? Ata, yoga, nushasanam. So now, are you present? Are you in this moment? Next one, yoga, chitta, vritti, nirodha. Okay, yoga, as my cohort said the other day, yesterday, it's the calming of the fluctuations of the mind. Let's put a pause in it. Okay, let's just put a pause in it. Once we do that, ta-da, drashtu, Svarupe Vastanam. Okay, so now everybody plant your feet again, snuggle your hips into your seat, and sit up really tall for me. Roll your shoulders on your back, clear your mind, open your heart, and allow your body to be undefended. I'm going to put a crown on your head now, and it's got all the colors of the chakras, little gems all around. Do not let your crown get crooked. You are the seer. You are abiding in your true identity. Feel it. Take that seat of royalty. As Dana mentioned, the Raja Yoga. Okay, so now Patanjali said, you're either doing yoga or you're not doing yoga. You're either seeing the glass half empty or you're seeing the glass half full. So then what? Vritti, Svarupyam, Itaratra. So otherwise, I don't know how to fix that, you guys, but you're attached to the vrittis. You're attached to the fluctuations of your mind. Okay, so what are eating disorders? These are serious, life-threatening illnesses, often with fatal outcomes. There's comorbidities. There's anxiety, depression, PTSD, OCD, and shame. And they involve extreme emotions and attitudes and behaviors, and sometimes there's self-harm. So who's affected? Over 70 million people worldwide will have an eating disorder at some point in their life. And during the pandemic, right, the isolation made it worse. So I'm going to talk about a few here: anorexia nervosa, restricting food intake, over exercising, use of laxatives. I suffered from bulimia nervosa. That's where you eat too much and then you vomit, you purge. You get into extreme exercise and you have excessive concern about your body weight. Binge eating disorder, this is where you consume a large amount of food, usually in isolation, but there's no purging. There are other types of eating disorders. One of my family members has the night eating syndrome, where he'll get up in the middle of the night and he'll eat. And because of that, because of eating at night after 7 p.m., he now has diabetes. Pica is when the kids eat things that aren't food, like paint, chalk, soil, their toys. Oops, what happened? Oh, there we go. So there's a link, research shows, there's a link between childhood trauma and eating disorders. So maybe mom and dad fought a lot, maybe there was a divorce, maybe there was body shaming in school, or self-objectification, where you felt your only value was how good you looked, how sexy you looked, how sexually attractive you were, or how you performed on the field or on the court. And when there is trauma, we have a loss of interoception, self-objectification, trauma, body shame. So these are all the things that are sort of root causes. We heard yesterday about the polyvagal theory, and I want you to know what's important on this slide for me is this phrase, the ventral vagal social engagement. This is where we co-regulate. This is why it's so important that each one of us has a personal practice, because if we can regulate ourselves, then we can help other people to regulate. And as Stephen Porges says, that's why we have dogs. We sit down on the couch and we pet our dog and we regulate. Or cats. So what happens when we experience a traumatic event? It's overwhelming, right? Our brain's emotional centers in overdrive. There's a fight or flight hormone. Cortisol floods the brain. Digestion shuts down. The hippocampus shrinks. We have the reduction in our ability to think, make decisions, call for help, and our memory decreases. So the treatment currently is inpatient and outpatient, and these are not easily accessible. One of my friends right now has a granddaughter who's 9 years old who has an eating disorder and is involved in self-harm, and they can't get her into a program. The waiting list is too long. In England, sometimes the waiting list is 2 to 3 years. They deal with it primarily with talk therapy, cognitive behavioral therapy, dialectical behavior therapy, and drugs, pharmaceuticals. But drugs are costly and they have side effects, right? You could get a headache, you might have digestion issues, you don't sleep right, sometimes even suicide. Now, when the problem of an eating disorder is treated this way, when we're not addressing root cause, there's relapse. And if a patient or an individual relapses too many times, that eating disorder takes root, and then it's nearly impossible to heal. So I'm suggesting that we look at healing versus treatment. So in the corner here, we have a picture of our program, our nonprofit Chicago Yoga Project, in which we went into Chicago. We dealt with adjudicated youth ages 17 to 25 who've been exposed to trauma, gun violence. And the response we had to doing yoga with them twice a month was unbelievable. Many of them had eating disorders there. The type of yoga that we need to do for somebody who has an eating disorder is different, perhaps, than what we might do for someone who has domestic violence issues or other issues. So we need to calm down the nervous system. We might use more restorative yoga, like what you're seeing here. We might use slower yoga, yoga in which the posture is held so the person can breathe, to build that introspection, to build that awareness. How does yoga help? It lowers cortisol. This is that stress hormone that Brooke was talking about that triggers fight or flight. It raises GABA, which is the amino acid that helps to calm you down. It reduces anxiety, stress, and fear. So yoga and positive embodiment, when you're in your body and you nurture attuned self-care, yoga is going to make these treatments that are currently in use work better. There's going to be less relapse and more sustained healing. We're going to empower people to deal with the problems of living in this world of trauma. So I'm suggesting that our problems are pathways. It was for me. If I didn't go through what I went through, I would have never opened my yoga studio. I found the frequency of bliss because I was willing to experience the pain and let it move through me so that I could find this frequency of bliss. So there's a book, Power versus Force. David Hawkins talks about the body map, and he lists bliss next to enlightenment. So how does yoga work for positive embodiment? Well, during my research, I'm a big fan of Joseph Campbell's work, and Joseph Campbell wrote a book called Pathways to Bliss, and I discovered that at age 50, he went to India, and he studied the koshas, and that's where he got that phrase, follow your bliss. So let's look at the first one, Annamaya Kosha. This is the physical body. This is where what we eat matters, when we eat matters, how we eat matters. The second one, Pranamaya Kosha, the subtle body, the energy body, it's your breath. Your breath transforms the food. So if you're all stressed out and constricted and tight and you're not breathing, the food's not going to help you. You're not going to get the nutrients you need so you can think clearly and have discernment. So this is a slide that actually I got from Sadhbir. This was presented to this symposium on medicine and health, and I made it mine. I fixed it so that it was mine, but it's essentially from him. He gave me permission to use it. So the yoga practices that work, that the study at Harvard looked at, was postures, breath, relaxation, and meditation. And what they found was that it affects our fitness level, our flexibility, our strength, our coordination and balance, kind of our proprioception, so that's the embodiment piece, self-regulation, stress, emotion, resilience, equanimity, the ability to deal, The house is burning down, but you're not going to freak out because you can stay grounded. You have equanimity, awareness, attention, mindfulness, concentration, metacognition, spirituality, this unitive state, transcendence, flow, transformation, and a life full of purpose and meaning. Really important. And this affects our global human functionality. Okay, this is the good part. This is my parents, Flo and Frank. There they are, all lovey-dovey. I think they were at the Stork Club in New York. And they're drinking, right? And smoking. My mother was a lung cancer patient, among other things, right? I walked that path with her, which was very difficult for me. My father came from the island of Malta. How many people have been to Malta? Okay, Malta is a small country off the coast of Sicily and experienced extreme warfare during World War II. And the Queen and King of England bestowed the George Cross to the people of Malta in 1942 for their courage and bravery. And there's 8 points on the Maltese cross that stand for the 8 Beatitudes. Why is that important? Well, in my journey, I've always been told to pay attention to synchronicity and things that occur like this. So we've got 8 limbs of yoga. We've got 8 Beatitudes. Jesus gave us the Beatitudes on the Sermon of the Mount. On page 71 of Sajjidananda's Yoga Sutras, he references one of the Beatitudes. He says, "Blessed are the pure, for they shall see God." He says, before you meditate, clear your mind. Get rid of the impurities and become pure. In the book by Eckhart Tolle, The New Earth, he also references one of the Beatitudes. And he says, the meek will inherit the earth. Who are the meek? They are the egoless. What is the earth? The awakened consciousness. So I took the road less traveled, and that made all the difference. I leave you now with this one thought. So on my journey, I got to interview Geshe Michael Rausch, who was the first American ordained Tibetan Buddhist monk, and he came to the Wilmette, Illinois, to launch his book, The Tibetan Book of Yoga. And in the interview, he talked to me about this sutra. Sutra's 2.35, Ahimsa Pradishtayam Tatsani Dao Vaira Tyaga. In the presence of one who is established firmly in nonviolence, hostility recedes. And then he said to me, Lisa, if we're not constantly taking care of each other, the yoga doesn't work. This last thought, this is a paraphrase from Marianne Williamson, who wrote the book Return to Love, based on A Course in Miracles, the channeled voice of the Holy Spirit or of Jesus. Everything is either love or a cry for love. Thank you.